Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so excited to have you. You are in for a treat today. Today, I am here with the founder of Mid Career Mastery and the Mastery Map, someone I've known for a number of years. He's a former executive for HBO, for City, for Cartoon Network, specifically in marketing. So, definitely a creative mind. But also, you've seen him with Executive Leadership Council, which is where I met him many years ago, in addition to as a feature for Essence Magazine and Black Enterprise and Black Men Excel. For any of you guys who have done that conference in Miami, he's come back many years over. So we are super excited to bring on Adrian Porter, the founder of Mid Career Mastery, to give us a little teaser around the program that we will be launching with the National Black MBA Association very soon. So welcome, Adrian. Welcome, welcome. So excited to have you with us.
Dr. Tan, it's always an honor. You know how we do. Every time you and I have a chance to connect, dialogue, it's a happier day. I should say that. So it's an honor. It's an honor to be here with you, with the rest of the National Black MBA Association team, who I have huge reverence for. So it's always a blessing. Thank you for having me.
Yes, yes, you definitely have lots of history with the National Black MBA Association, which we're
Yes.
going to get into
Yes.
for sure, because that is a story that we definitely need to hear. Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely. So tell us about your thing. Tell us about who you are, why you're here, what's your purpose, which you are walking in every single day, right? You
yes.
are. And we know that. We know that by the way that you show up, how passionate you are about what it is that you do, and the story of how you got there. So just kind of give us an overall into who is Adrian Porter. And then we'll definitely get into the specifics of the Mastery Map program. But this is important for people to know and understand as they're thinking through their own journeys.
Oh, well, thank you. I hope I live up to that that setup. But thank you. I'm just, I'm Adrian Porter, obviously, my name. I'm founder of Mid Career Mastery. More importantly, I'm a husband, I'm a father. Like to say that I'm a Southern gentleman with a New York state of mind. What that means, I was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee, but I left and went to Vanderbilt B School in Nashville. But after B School, courtesy of the Career Expo at the conference, which we can get into, I moved to New York back in my late 20s and spent 10 years there. So, New York, I should say Memphis, Tennessee raised, but New York City groomed, lived in Brooklyn, worked in the city. And that's where I really, in my 30s, just really catapulted and learned about professional and careers and met some great people, worked for some great companies. Then we were about to have our first child and we moved back down to the South. And now I reside in the Atlanta, Georgia area. But again, I'm just someone who is just trying to always up level, to master. And when I say mastery, not necessarily a final destination, which I want to make sure I frame that it is an ongoing journey of transformation, of upselling, up leveling, I should say, lifelong learning, and just really owning my path, whatever path that may take me. So when you think about mastery, mastery is really about having domain over your journey. And so that's what I'm always trying to do day to day. But more importantly, I thrive in helping people add value and what I like to say, turn up the volume on their best self. And that's what I do. And I do that through these platforms that you spoke about earlier.
That's a word. I need to write that down. Having domain over your journey, because
Yes.
there can be a lot of anxiety that comes with the word mastery, right? So
Oh,
let's
yes.
right? Because
Yes.
you're always striving to do better, to be better, right? But there's no such thing as perfection, and there
Right.
definitely isn't a such thing as a perfect journey. So I really love that word, having mastery over your domain, right? Which
Yes.
means ultimately you're doing the absolute best you can with what you have right now in front of
Right.
you, right? And taking
Right.
all the information that you can to make the best choices. So I
Right.
love that. I
Oh,
love
thank
that.
you. Yeah. Yeah. And not to interrupt you, Tim, but I think it warranted me saying that because, again, as you pointed out so beautifully, when we hear the word master, a lot of times we think that's something we have to do for so many hours and where that's it. We've hit that threshold. But again, it's an ongoing journey. So you could be on a path of mastery, whether you're 25, 35, 45, 75, 65. But again, it's about just having that ownership and domain and agency, what I like to say, on your path. So yeah, that just just warranted another highlight and underline.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the beginning. We're going to kind of go back
Okay.
to where you were, and a little bit of your journey to get you to the place that you decide that you're going to found something that feels like inspirational and purposeful, and it's going to make a difference, right? Like obviously made it to that point in your journey where you're thinking about your legacy and
Right.
your gifts and what you can bring to the world. So take us back a little bit, take us
Okay.
back to B-School, take us back to the Career Expo. Give us a little flavor for what that journey looks like, because I really think it's in the powers in the moments, right? And so as we kind of hear these moments that you had, that's
Yeah.
going to spark some light for some other people.
Well, let's talk about some of those. I like to say those magical moments, because anytime we go through something, it's always a different page in your chapter, in your book of life, in your book of your journey. And for me, you reference, and I referenced initially with respect to the conference and the organization. So let's go back to B-School. Remember some years ago, and again, how I roll. So I'm proud. I actually just celebrated a birthday last week, and so in my early 50s now. But I would say back then in my mid 20s when I went to business school, I mentioned I went to Vanderbilt Business School and I graduated in 99. But for those of you who are familiar, especially for this audience, when you're in business school, you have usually, if you go full time, it's a 2-year program. And I went into business school thinking I was going to be an investment banker. That was and again, I did not choose that because I was passionate about it. I just thought it would be cool. And it's a funny story. I actually was watching one of my films. We like to keep it real. So Set It Off, I like Jada Pinkett, Blair Underwood. And I remember his character worked at a bank and he was talking to Stoney, which is Jada's character, about how he went to B-School. And I remember at that moment back in 96, I was thinking about transitioning or pivoting and pursuing my further education. And I thought, okay, investment banker, finance, that sounds cool. Blair Underwood's cool. He's a cool brother. So I think I can follow that. But I knew I wanted to stay in the South, and I knew I wanted to go to a top 20 B school. And so Vanderbilt was there, and I got in. And my first, I guess, couple of weeks or months, I thought that I wanted to pursue investment banking. My major in undergrad was accounting, but I always had a passion for storytelling. And so even thinking about finance, it was always some incongruence there. But I said I was going to do it. So usually in your first semester of business school, you take your primary classes, and then you get into the latter part of your first year or your second year into your concentration. But I never forget, it was 1997. And it was in Dallas, Texas. The conference was in Dallas. And as a first year B-School student, we went there to look around, go to the Career Expo, look for prospective companies for internships and what have you. Now, mind you, I am on the plane. I'm getting off in Dallas. I'm going to the hotel. I'm arriving the next day. It's a Thursday, Career Expo. First of all, I had never seen so many thousands and thousands of brothers and sisters, sharp dressed, smelling good, looking good, and coming from Memphis, Tennessee. It wasn't like I'm from the country, but it was an awakening, and I was so inspired. Now, that inspiration turned into frustration. Why? Because as I was going through the different Career Expo companies and trying to talk to the Merrill Lynch's and Morgan Stanley's, I just didn't feel right. And it wasn't clicking for me. And I felt like I wasn't walking in my path. I felt that I was approaching these prospective finance companies just because I wanted to put investment banking next to my name. So what did I do? I went back, left the Career Expo, and I felt I'm not making traction. And I came to, I guess, an epiphany, if you will, that this isn't who I am. So what did I do? I pivoted that day. That night, I went to the hotel computer room, pulled up my resume, said, you know what? I'm gonna change it to marketing. And I'm gonna hit that Friday, the Career Expo, the next day, because I knew in my heart of hearts, I love storytelling. I love motivating people to take action. I felt that marketing was more in my pathway of success. And so the Friday, the second day of the expo, I was
a new person,
a marketing major. And lo and behold, what happened? I started approaching the P&Gs, the Frito-Lays, the marketing companies, the Sara Lee's. I felt I had a certain different pep in my step. I was like, this is who I am. This is what I'm supposed to do. So right then and there in 97, I changed my concentration and became a marketing major and got my MBA in marketing. And in the second year of business school, I went back to the conference for my second year in Detroit, Michigan, and interviewed with Citibank there at the Career Expo. Then subsequently, they hired me from that interview at the National Black MBA Conference in Detroit, Michigan. And then my 10-year journey in New York, 3 or 4 years in Citibank, then HBO started. And it all started, and the seed was the National Black MBA Conference in Dallas and in Detroit. But the pivoting, the having agency over how do I make my passions congruent with my background and what I wanted my next to be. And that's what set me on. So it's a long-winded way to tell you why I have reverence for the organization. And it was a quintessential part of the chapter in my story to get to where I am today.
I love that. I love that. So you're at the expo,
yes,
right? Second time around, you're hired at Citi. You go and join some phenomenal companies.
Yes.
And then
HBO,
you
yes.
yourself founding Mid-Career Mastery.
Yes.
So tell us about the organization and what do you do specifically with Mid-Career Mastery? And I think this is really important to know from a setup standpoint to help us kind of bridge into what you're going to be doing specifically for the National Black MBA Association.
Yeah, no, thank you. So after that, obviously, and I mentioned that I moved back to Atlanta after I spent 5 years at HBO, got a chance to work with some great campaigns, with some great teammates and some great, I learned a lot about leadership and professional acumen and storytelling even more, because obviously HBO is a pinnacle of storytelling at the time. But we moved to Atlanta and I started working for Turner Broadcasting, specifically with Cartoon Network, got a chance to market shows like Star Wars, Clone Wars and so forth. But then I got laid off. Then I got let go. And that was the year I turned 40. And that was a moment for me, which was also many people would say was a messy middle moment. And it was, but I like to reframe it. It was more of a magical middle moment. Why? Because it forced me to think about my next. So I turned 40, got laid off, had all this experience, was stressed, believe it or not. It was real, life, kids. But I thought about, well, how do I want to create value in the world? And I noticed that many people that I was associated with, whether they were colleagues or friends or other professionals in the middle season of their own lives, they were going through this quandary. They were at an inflection point, whether they were laid off or whether they were still working but not happy with what they were doing, or whether they were just trying to transition to the next. And so what I wanted to do is that I'm going through it, but the way that I am wired, I wanted to be the change that I wish to see in the world, a la Gandhi. So I started planting seeds of maybe consulting, helping other individuals who are in the middle chapters. I launched a podcast, Gen X Amplified, which at the time, definitely many of us who are Gen Xers go Gen X, Gen Exceptional, I like to say. We were also in our 40s and early 40s at the time. And so we were pretty much majority of the people who were in mid-career, right? Starting midlife. And so the podcast was a way for me to amplify the stories of professionals who are in that often forgotten generation between the brilliant boomers and the magnificent millennials. And because I like to, it's not about tearing down other generations, it's about amplifying the forgotten ones. And so it started with Gen X Amplified, podcasting, consulting. And then I realized, you know what? How can I create more value? How can I create more impact? How can I create something that wasn't just a podcast or a consultancy? It was more of a movement. And I wanted to see, okay, great. We heard about the mid-career malaise and the mess and the malaise, but what if we reframe that malaise to mastery, right? Both have 7 letters, both start with MA, but it's about reframing, it's about mindset. And so Mid-Career Mastery became not only this consultancy that I have, but a platform to help other people in what I call the magical middle, whether it's mid-career, midlife, or you're in the middle of a transition point, right? No matter your age or stage, how do you reframe the messy middle to the magical middle and master that path? And so Mid-Career Mastery was born. And then with that, I just wanted not just to have a platform in name only, I wanted to create a tool. And as a former marketer and a B school student, I love frameworks, because the frameworks, they are great at putting tactics and language into something that is hard to sometimes remember.
Mhm.
I wanted to codify something that could be used not only individually from a coaching standpoint, but for organizations, and codify what are some of those best practices and tactics and mindset shifts that people who tend to be successful in transforming at being successful, how do I codify that into something that was tangible? And so I thought, well, okay, well, what happens when you typically are stuck, right? You need a map, right?
Mhm.
You need a map when you're stuck in the traffic jam of life or the
Mhm.
traffic jam of your career. So map, and as a brand guy, mastery map. I love the alliteration. So I wanted to create a framework to be able to empower people to have agency in their transformation. And then I looked at some of those best practices. And I know that everything starts with mindset.
Mhm.
And obviously, if you have a great mindset, and you need to align that with purpose and meaning, and then how do you then establish milestones to get you to where you want to be? And thus, the mastery map was created as a framework, as a guide, as a tool to help people go from stuck to unstuck and thriving. So that's, again, a long-winded way of letting you know the journey of how I created what we're going to be talking about in more detail, and what this program and this accelerated program is all about, which is the mastery map program.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's so many things that you touched on there. There's a couple that I want to highlight.
Yes.
The first is you referenced the messy middle.
Yes.
And I think the thing of note about this program is you don't have to be middle-aged or mid-career, right? We are all in the messy middle,
Yeah.
right? And
Yes.
and all that means is all of us are transitioning from where we are today to who will be tomorrow,
Right.
right? And
Right.
that is thinking about our homes, our lives, our families, our careers, right? Even if we're early career, right? We're transitioning into what does the world look like? What do I need to know about myself, right? What can help me make the best decisions so I can have domain over my life, right? So
Right.
I think it's just important to know that it will be magical at times and we will be really, really excited with those decisions. But oftentimes the middle, no matter where you are and what stage you're in, the middle can be a bit messy.
Oh, it can. It can. No, it can. And just, I mean, in the middle, the messy middle is such a common, I guess, nomenclature or phrase. And again, there's literally in that we do feel messy at times. But the way I'm wired, the way my purpose and my mission, and I'm so passionate about the reframe. Okay,
Mhm.
it starts with mindset. What if the messy middle and the way that how permanent that theme is? What if that was one of the biggest myths that we were ever told? That the
Mm.
messy middle doesn't have to stay messy. What if it was magical? And that's what I truly believe. And so, to your point, yes, it isn't just about age or stage. So, yes, if you're mid-career, and again, we're living longer now. We're in the age of longevity. So, if you're living till your 80s or 90s or 100s, especially with the advent of technology, AI, and
Mm.
what have you, you can be 50, you can be 60 and still be in the middle of your career journey. And so when I say mid-career, it's not just whether you're mid-level, it's the middle of your journey, midlife, or at any age in the middle of an inflection point. And
Mhm.
so again, the messy middle is oftentimes that overlooked space where you've had some success. You've been successful. You've possibly even reached a C-suite or manager level. You're doing well, but you still feel stuck. You still feel unease. You still feel this ennui, and it's normal. There is a natural phenomenon, which I talk about a lot of times, called the U curve of happiness, where many studies over the years, longitudinal studies as well, have tracked people from early adulthood, and they notice that your self-reported level of happiness follows this U shape as you age. And so in your early adulthood, you tend to be a little bit happier and satisfied with life and work. But as you age through your 20s and your 30s, it
Mhm.
gets low and low. And guess where the nadir and the low point is? In your 40s, right?
Mhm.
Actually 45.3 or something like that. But then as you age and get into your 60s and 70s, it follows this U shape. Now, recent, because of the pandemic and AI and the advent of social media, that curve has shifted slightly where a lot of younger people
Mhm.
are feeling malaise and
Mhm.
stress,
Mhm.
unfortunately. And so, to that point, it adds credence to you can feel in the messy middle even in your early 30s.
Mhm.
But it's about the reframe. So, you may feel stuck, you may feel irrelevant, but what's great about the middle is the same distance from where you are to where you want to be. Okay. And so, it's about reframing. You're
Say
in
that
the
again. Say that one more time. Say it again.
the
Give those
middle.
new section.
The middle is the same distance from where you were to where you've been and the lessons you've learned to where you want to be in your next. And
Yeah.
so it starts with reframing that mindset. And that's why I say it's not just the messy middle, but the magical middle, because it is a powerful moment for reinvention and
Mm.
to reset, reframe, reimagine, and have the right empowerment to master that journey moving forward. So yeah.
Absolutely. Reinvention, reset, reframe, and reimagine.
Mhm.
This is so important right now,
It,
right?
oh, it is. It is.
When you think about where we are in 2025, and there is not one generation that's not been impacted by
Yes.
just overall uncertainty, right? Just rapid changes in technology, right? And we're, how do I keep up with this, right? Thinking about pivots and job displacements and layoffs, and there's so many things that are compounding in 2025, right? So this
Right.
is a perfect time for us to think about reinvention, reframing, right? Reimagining,
Yes.
right? And so this feels like the exact right time to deliver people what they need in 2025.
Yes, yes, it is. I mean, right now, we talk a lot about, we've been talking about internal and individual inflection points, which we all do, but we're all, characters in the master story of life and career where there is a macro inflection point that's affecting us all. And right now, we are definitely in it in 2025, not only whether it's political, social, technological, AI, disruption. And so, as you think about this macro level of disruption, we're all stuck in this traffic jam. So, what do? We need a map. And then, but again, like as I like to say, it starts with the reframe. And
Mhm.
so, if you're in that middle, okay, yes, the pace of change has accelerated, but that's where the magic happens. Okay, as I always like to say, when there's friction, when there's disruption, whether it's minimally when you're working out and you feel that strain and that in that 40th push-up, or for me sometimes that 20th push-up. Exactly. But how whatever, when you're working out, or when you're facing something of adversity, when you feel that friction, that's when the magic happens.
Mhm.
Okay, and so right now, from a macro level, this is where the magic happens. This is
Mhm.
where right now it's time to take agency. Yes, AI is here. We're all nervous. We're scared. Some of us are scared. Some of us are not scared. But we would be foolish to not acknowledge that
Mhm.
there has never been a technology that has this level of accelerated change and disruption in the history, whether it's the horse and buggy to the automobile or the advent of Web 1.0. Those are all technologies that transform society, but never at this level of exponential change. And so we're all a little nervous, but guess what? When you have agency, when you have mastery of your journey, when you are feeling that, okay, right now I can either sit on the sidelines or I can get in the game and understand that my level of transformation can be 10 times more, especially because I have a longer runway. This is when the magic happens. And so, yes, we're at a level of disruption, but that means the time is now for new conversations, new frameworks, community building, people with organizations like yourself, frameworks, whether it's a mastery map or any framework. This is the time to take ownership
Mhm.
of that road ahead. And there's no other time than now. That's a great opportunity for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
Very well said. Very well said.
Mhm.
So you've been doing this a long time, right? And I'm sure you've come across many different kinds of frameworks and other, organizations for professional development, and
Yeah.
overall other programs. And so, what would you say is the magic sauce? What makes the Mastery Map different
Mhm.
than other programs that you could think, that you could find out there? And the reason I think this is important is because, to your point, there's lots of happening, right?
Yes.
And you're being bombarded with, do this, sign up, do this class, take this seminar, this
Right.
webinar,
Right.
get smart, be a genius by tomorrow, right?
Right. 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 Right.
And I think it's important to just kind of put some love and context around, this is specifically what you'll get, for us for 5 weeks. So I can talk to that from the National Black MBA
Mhm.
Association point of
Mhm.
view. what you'll get in terms of being in this program for
Mhm.
the 5 weeks from July the 9th to August the 6th. But I'd
Mhm.
love for you to talk a little bit about what makes it different and special. What will they get specifically with you?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And then after I talk about kind of what makes it different, and then you talk at high level, I can also share kind of high level and even some quick slides of what the program entails per week.
Yeah.
So that they'll get. But let me just take a step back first. And again, a lot of the things that we talk about in this framework, I didn't invent. I want to make that clear. I just codified the best practices, but I definitely added my insights, my background. And so what makes this different, a lot of frameworks I feel, which are great, and I am a fan of many frameworks. I've benefited from many frameworks out there as well. I like to focus on, the science and the philosophy coupled with the real world application,
Mhm.
right? A lot of frameworks, they teach tactics, right? Like you said, do this and you will achieve this, or you may achieve this. Do this. I want to start with internal transformation first. To me, the pathway of domain and ownership and agency is first taking a step back to have that internal conversation with yourself. Because many of us in this messy middle, this, Dr. Tan, we don't either have the time to do that internal work, or we don't make the time
Mhm.
to do that internal work. And
Mm.
until you're right with yourself,
Mhm.
as Lauren Hill said, you can't be right within. I'm butchering the
Mhm.
lyric, but uh,
Mhm.
until you're right with yourself, you cannot have external transformation and external amplification. And so the mastery map focuses on internal transformation, and it also focuses on some of my favorite methods of science. Number one is narrative psychology. So as I mentioned, I'm a storyteller, and I've always implemented the science of story in everything that I do from
Mhm.
years ago, whether it's simply as telling my own story, marketing stories as a marketing executive, launching my podcast. And when I interview, I always ask individuals about if there was a song that would play that would capture your story. So I've always implemented story, but then about a few years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I stumbled on a concept called narrative identity, which is and it was totally everything that I had been doing, but I couldn't put language into it. And
Mhm.
so it's rooted in narrative psychology, and it's all about your narrative identity, which is your internal story that we all tell
Mm.
ourselves about where we've been, our past, our present, and our imagined future. We
Mhm.
all have internal stories in our mind. What is our identity? And that identity is not fixated, it evolves. No, it includes not just a list of facts. Like, I went to this school, I was born here, but it's how we narrate those
Mhm.
chapters in our journey that help us define meaning and purpose. And I said, this is definitely, I'm going all in, and this is what I've been talking about. And so I wanted the mastery map to focus on, especially with respect to the meaning pillar, if how do I empower people when they're looking to have agency in their journey? What is that internal story that we're telling ourselves? What is our own narrative identity? That's what I think a lot of frameworks are missing. So, for example, if you're thinking, okay, I'm too old to learn AI, right? That is a story that you've been telling yourself based on
Mhm.
what? Based on your past, based on your how you were not proactive in learning tools, or maybe you were proactive. Then you need to retell a different story based
Mhm.
on your experience. You've adapted to different technologies. You love learning. AI is just another behavior change tool.
Mhm.
So, what is that internal story? The mastery map is also rooted in behavior change. Again, when we talk about AI, the way I talk about and teach how to transform in this world of AI isn't just about technology, it's about behavior change. So, this isn't just a technology tool. This is really, we're talking about behavior. And so the mastery map codifies these best practices, right?
Mhm.
Neuroscience, mindset, neuroplasticity, how our brain is rewired and can adapt to change, narrative identity, meaning, and then milestones, which is really rooted in growth and goal setting philosophy, right?
Mhm.
Whether it's a dog or what have you. So taking those three elements of science and philosophy with real world application, that's what's make the mastery map, I believe, a little different and more applicable, because it follows this natural state and phase of transformation. You have to think and reframe first, right?
Mhm.
And then how do you align it with what's meaningful and purpose for you to give you that new sense of dopamine and
Mhm.
purpose? And then you set milestones to get to your next. This is a natural progression of transformation. And so I just codified that to make it simple. And it doesn't help that all the three pillars start with M. So as a alliteration marketing storyteller, I think it helps as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, there's so many things I want to touch on there. So the first is narrative identity.
Yes.
And what I think is really important in this stage of transition and pivoting is that most people don't realize we have 60,000 thoughts a day,
Yes.
and 80% of them are negative.
Mm.
60,000 thoughts a
Ooh,
day, and
love
80% are negative,
Wow, I
right?
didn't know that. Oh, I learned something today, which is wow. That number is crazy. Wow.
It is. It
Wow.
is. And what happens is, to your point, you're telling yourself this story over and over again. I can't catch up. I
Right.
don't know how. It's because, right? And we do that. And oftentimes those stories we've told ourselves, we've been telling ourselves since before the age of 11. We
Yes.
used to use different, our language has gotten more advanced and sophisticated since 11, but the story's still there.
Right. Right.
Right? I'm
Right.
not worthy. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not fast enough. I won't pick up quick enough.
Right.
These things, these moments, right? And so, as you kind of dig deep and really think about the narrative that I'm telling myself, and how did I get there? Because I have to understand the root cause so I can understand the reframe.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I just think that's so meaningful, and that is definitely something that is a standout for your program. Were you going to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I want to make sure I give credit because, again, when I stumbled on the concept, so Dan McAdams, who's a professor out of Northwestern, so he really created and popularized this concept of narrative identity. He's a professor out of Northwestern, Dan McAdams, and so this started. I mean, he was preaching, what is it? When we think about traits, so it started with personality psychology, right? A lot of personality psychology studies assign different traits to us and personalities, right? And many of those are fixed, right? Our age, or we may be, let's even go further than that with respect to personality. We're very energetic, or we're proactive, or we tend to, whatever the personality traits those are. Many times as you age or you go through life, those for the most part remain fixed a little bit. I mean, there is some variation, but there's another part of your identity that wasn't studied before the in 1980s that Dan McAdams really popularized with respect to narrative. And those are the stories, as you mentioned, that we tell ourselves. And so I want to make sure I give credit. But yes, that the concept of, what he argued with narrative identity is that it really explains how we see ourselves as becoming the person that we are now, and also who we're becoming. And so based on the stories that we have told about ourselves in the past, things that we tend to remember and put narrative around, both good and bad, tragic experiences, positive experiences. How did those experiences shape who we are? And as we get granular for this audience, our career story, right? Those experiences in our past. How did those experiences that I choose to intentionally remember as part of my narrative identity, how did those experiences shape who I am and also who I'm becoming? A lot of times we don't take the time to think about that, but it's so critical. So as I was telling the story earlier, I talked about Dallas and Detroit and the conference and the expo and pivoting with my resume. I talked about being laid off. Those experiences and chapters in my story are part of my narrative identity, but they also shaped who I am now, but also who I'm becoming. And so a key element, that middle pillar of the Mastery Map framework, which are called the 3 pillars of transformation, meaning really unpacks this element of narrative identity, because that's where the why happens. That's where you really take a step back and reflect. And so, yeah, to your point, those stories that we're telling ourselves, we have to think about, do we or should we, which I argue most of us should, tell a different story about ourselves, because that's going to shape who we will become in the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, before joining the National Black MBA Association, I had a 15-year career in talent management, right?
Yes.
And when I think about talent management, learning and development, engagement, performance, goal setting, career, what's your career look like? I think, I just kind of wanted to take a moment and say, from an HR standpoint, if you're sitting at your desk and you're wondering why something feels off in the pit of your stomach,
Right.
as from an HR standpoint, we're measuring that as your engagement levels, right? You know,
Yes.
are you, the newer term is flourishing. What does flourishing
Mm.
look like? Fulfillment. Sometimes, you know, organizations measure that, but most oftentimes it's an engagement survey,
Right.
and you're asking yourself, you know, what's missing? There's something I feel like something is missing. You know, and I made the same choice you did. I moved from finance to what we're doing right now today, right?
There you go. There you go. What?
It was
Come on in. I love it.
I had that moment, right?
If
Spreadsheet.
all of you out there are looking to do the same pivot, come on. The water's warm. Come on. Come on. I'm just
Absolutely.
kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
So I just think it's important to kind of drill down on that and say, you know, if you feel like you need to do some exploration
Mm.
because something isn't quite clicking or you can't quite get to the place to ask yourself the right questions or to uncover the thing that you know is in you, right? How do you amplify the voice in yourself just a little bit louder so you can hear it over those negative thoughts? It's
Right.
important.
Right.
This can be really, really important, you know, work to do for self like exploration as you kind of pivot to whatever the next stage is, right?
Oh yeah, it is, and I think it would be a good time. And let me know, Tam. I would love to just kind of for the
Yeah,
audience to kind of see as we talk about, you know, the program. You mentioned the 5 weeks. For the 4 of those 5 weeks, which will be Mastery Map curriculum, there's going to be a week in the middle, I believe, that's going to allow for more reflection based on the exercises I'm going to have you do. And so I'm going to just pull up
yeah,
just a few slides so people can just kind of see at a high level what this accelerator program in partnership with the National Black MBA Association looks like.
absolutely. Oh, these look beautiful. Thank you for that. So let me just
Yeah,
for
yeah,
those
please.
that may have joined a little bit later, we are hosting a 5-week program from July the 9th to August the 6th with our founder here of Maker Mastery, Adrian Porter. He's gonna graciously take us through some of the topics for the content. But then also, there is a fantastic opportunity to meet with some of our most distinguished corporate partners, people that have been with us a number of years and will be at the conference happening September 24th through the 26th in Houston, Texas. You'll want to be there. It will, of course, be a time as it always is. And so if you're looking to get a head start on meeting some of those people, just a bit of a meet and greet, understanding what kinds of companies are going to be at the conference, then you'll want to join this program July 9th through August the 6th. And fantastic, Adrian, go ahead and take us through a little bit of what they'll get.
Yeah. So again, just high level summary. So the Mastery Map Accelerator program is, you know, where clarity meets reinvention, and there'll be a little bit more of that as well. But it's very important to call out. It's a 5-week, what we call a high impact learning experience, designed to help professionals such as yourself get unstuck if you're stuck, gain clarity, and thrive with purpose. And so we're going to emphasize this is a very, very critical, especially in today's disruptive world of work. And so each session was focused on one of the framework's 3 pillars. And so I'll go to the next. So this is a visual model of what the framework looks like, because I think frameworks is really important to have a visual model and make sure there's very simple but powerful. So it's based on what I call the trifecta of transformation, right? Based on what I've seen out there, that what works, and just codified. So it starts with mindset. The second pillar is meaning, and the third pillar is milestones. And it is a map, but there's no final destination. So this can be used ongoing. You necessarily don't have to start with the first pillar of mindset, but I would encourage you to, because everything starts with the mind. And so the session 1 is kind of our opening session. So this is going to be all about mastering your mindset. The first day of the accelerator program starts July 9th. And I like to give each session, each curriculum point for each week, a theme. And so session 1 will be all about releasing the resistance for reinvention. Because many of us, we are resisting reinvention. We're resisting the reinventing ourselves. And again, the reinvention doesn't have to be massive and macro. It can be micro. And just to also clarify, this will be 90 minutes per session from 1 till 2:30. And so around the same time. And so the focus for session 1 will be about overcoming limiting beliefs, embracing change, and reducing the noise of disruption. This is the kickoff session. This is all about why mindset is the foundation of transformation. We're going to talk about the internal emotional toll of feeling stuck in the middle while we're navigating AI anxiety, disruptions. We're also going to talk about growth mindset. One of my favorite authors, Carol Dweck, in her book Mindset, really popularized the idea of having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, which many of us, we fall victim to that. But there are going to be other powerful mindsets we're going to talk about, whether it's adaptive mindset, growth mindset, learner's mindset, all the above. And so some of the key inputs and concepts and outputs. And so we're going to be talking about the stuck point of uncertainty, the science of neuroplasticity, which I talked about a little bit earlier, where, all of us, our brains are wired to reinvent ourselves. We're not fixed in our skills. We're not fixed in our superpowers. And so because of neuroplasticity, we all have the opportunity to rewire and reframe. And then we're going to set new growth goals. So in session 1, we're going to talk about the content. We're also going to be on a pathway of setting new growth goals. Okay, session 2 is about rediscover your meaning. So session 1, master your mindset. Session 2 is rediscover your meaning. The theme will be aligning career goals with purpose through storytelling. And I'm not just talking about external storytelling, like who am I, my LinkedIn bio, all of those things are important. What do I say in an interview? Those are great, but until your your external story can manifest itself, you need to really grapple with that internal story. So we're going to get into clarifying your narrative identity. And then there is a exercise under Mid-Career Mastery, which I created, called the Meaning Alignment Experience, or MAX for short. And this is an assessment and experience where we're going to have all of us deconstruct our past stories, our themes, our passions, our values, and how do we align that with some of our career growth goals. And so this is the heart of the Mastery Map framework. This is about meaning, narrative identity. We're going to go through the meaning alignment experience and start drafting the output. One of the key outputs is we're going to draft what I call a meaning manifesto. Okay, this is a statement, not just a purpose statement, which is fine, but I want us to think about crafting a meaning manifesto, which is our statement of alignment with articulating our redefined purpose, our renewed story, and some of our envisioning our growth goals. And then after we rediscovered our meaning, then we get into session 3, which is about establishing new milestones, right? Turning vision and action into achievement. Not just big macro goals or milestones, but even those micro milestones, because there is power in small wins, which we're going to talk about a lot. And so even before we get into that, we're going to review our insights from the MAX assessment and then help use those insights to actually define our macro and micro goals and next steps, and also develop our milestones tracker. And then the 4th session will be all about maximizing your mastery map. That is amplifying your impact and influence, particularly in today's age of AI, right? How do I synthesize all this transformation, the 3 pillars? How do I cultivate new strategic relationships to maximize how I reframe my mindset, discover my meaning, establish new milestones? This really is a capstone to bring it all together and get very granular. Where again, we're going to talk about strategic relationships, relationship equity, macro milestones, AI adoption. What's an AI fluency plan? Small wins, large wins. And then think about, at the end of the day, as we go through this curriculum, what is that one commitment that I want to do moving forward of how I become new masters of my own journey? And so that is essentially the 4 sessions and how we bring it all together. And again, just think about, when you walk away from this program, you would have a personalized mastery map. You would be more in tune of thinking about how you think with mindset, what you align to, and what you act on. And with those 3 pillars, you'll be in a better position for external transformation and internal transformation. And that's it.
I love that. I love that. So that's a little bit of an overview of the program.
Yeah, there's so much more than that. That's just an overview. So you didn't get it for free today. So don't. But just a high level of what you're gonna.
That is a steal for $3.99. I will tell you that is a steal for $399. So a few things that I also wanted to mention. One is we actually are offering conference code discounts, $50 off conference. So right now we're in early bird registration, which is the cheapest price that you will get for our annual conference. We're offering $50 off right now for registering for this program. So you'll definitely want to take advantage of that. We're also offering meet and greets with some of our corporate partners in advance of the conference. So if you want to meet in a smaller space, have someone look at you directly in the eye and say, hey, this is who I am. I'd love to know what you're hiring for. Let's make sure that you attend this program. Again, the dates, the Adrian will be teaching will be July the 9th through August the 6th. And then we'll have our meet and greet with our corporate partners as well. All information is on Eventbrite and LinkedIn for the promo codes, as well as the link to register for the program. So if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'm going to address a few of the questions that I see here. Yeah. One says, what if someone doesn't know what they want next? How can this program help them?
Ooh, that's a lot of us, many at times. It's a great question. Whoever asked that question. And so this program will help you either gain clarity on what that is, because many of us at a certain point of time don't know what they want next. I didn't know, again, on Thursday at the Career Expo, day one. But going through that internal storytelling, and specifically with the exercise, the meaning alignment experience, where you start to go back and reflect upon your values, your skills, your gaps, your superpowers, those meaningful life chapters, and start coupling that with the best opportunities that could be in front of you now. It will get you closer to having an awakening of what you want to do. But it starts with self-inventory, right? Again, it starts with taking the time out in a conversation, a program like this. And also, what's great about this program is that we're going to do a lot of pair and share exercises. So this is going to be you'll be part of the Mastery Map community cohort. And so you need that sense of community. So being able to share with others your output from your meaning alignment experience, where you start to reflect and look at, how did you rate your past, your experience, your values, your superpowers, your skills with where you want to go. And then based on some other external things we'll look at, that should get you clarity on what you wanted to do. For example, one incident I remember when I did a workshop for a company, and it was around the same time, but we had a breakout where we went through the meaning alignment experience, and this person was a director at an organization, a finance organization, but they wanted to get into more social media consultancy. And so the first thing that we always force everyone to think about is not just, great, let's figure out how to do that. First, we ask why. We start to unpack the why. Well, and I ask, why do you feel that? Why do you want to do that? What is the reason that that's even an idea of a career path? And it started with her passions for just on social and wanting to make a bigger difference and wanting to learn more about technology. Again, the next goal was also not just about how she wanted to succeed in social media consultancy. She also wanted to learn. So we talk about that, and until that point, she's launching on the side. She still works for corporate, but those are some of the ideas of, it starts to that question. It starts with internal self-inventory, the alignment experiences and exercises, and then looking at where the gaps are, because many of us too, in the messy, or I should say magical middle, we are not fully attuned with some of those transferable skills that we possess, especially when we're in this middle season where we've had enough experience and we haven't taken the time or given permission to think about in more direct, effective, strategic ways, those transferable skills. You could be working in a vocation or field that's strictly, let's say, finance, or I don't know, whatever the case may be. You probably possess a few transferable skills that could transfer over to whether it's nonprofit work, whether it's HR, and you just don't even know it, or you haven't given permission to fully align those transferable skills with new opportunities. That's what we do through the Mastery Map program. And so hopefully I answered your question.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. I'm going to answer this first question. And if you, I'm sorry, this next question. And if you have something to add, feel free. But I think this is going to be really important. How have companies reacted after their employees went through the Mastery Map? And I think this is important because as an HR professional, I would often, a lot of times working in talent management, a part of my job is to help people understand, where they're going, what they may want to do next, et cetera. And the biggest challenge for employers is to do that work for you, right? Employees can't do that work for you, right? So you find yourself at a company, you're confused, you're frustrated. I don't know what I want to do next. I don't really know if this is the place for me. I don't even know what opportunities are in this company. I have no idea, what's could be available in the future, right? And then that starts to spin, right?
Right, right.
And so I was always very, very grateful for programs like this that would allow people to kind of do the self inventory work, because what it really helps you realize is that your career is yours to drive.
Mm,
Your career is yours to drive, right? And
right,
oftentimes we get into a company and we think, well, they should be teaching me, or they should be showing me, or they should be telling me, or they should be moving me along, right?
right.
And ultimately, it's your job to understand what it is you need, want, desire to move yourself on. So you can advocate for yourself, so you can have the right conversations. So when someone says, what do you want to do next? You actually have a thoughtful response. You can tell them not only what, the why, and I love some ideas around the how, but this is what I'm thinking, right? And so
Yeah.
I think that's really important, to take ownership, as you're kind of advocating, it's talent review time. It's, hey, I've been in my role a couple of years and I'm really thinking about X next, right? To really have the language to be able to clearly articulate where you are and where you want to be next.
Oh yeah. No, that's perfect answer. Yeah, thank you.
You're your best advocate, Robin said here. Um, will the Mastery Map program be available in some other medium other than the initial July and August training?
Yes, yes. I'm always making it available. So yes, it will. So definitely I encourage you, especially if you're watching now, to if you can get in the cohort, because there could be multiple cohorts as well, because based
Yeah.
on we're trying to keep it to a productive number, obviously. So we can't having 50 in one cohort, is cool, but we probably want to break that up. But even outside of that, yes. So we do workshops, half day workshops. We do for example, this 5-week program is a very intensive program, obviously, but we do other extensive programs. So you can reach out to me directly via direct message here on LinkedIn for other opportunities. But definitely, if you want to have that magical experience of the Mastery Map and Mid-Career Mastery with the National Black MBA Association, definitely let's start here, and then we can look at some other opportunities as well.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. We are considering the possibility of having a bit of a gathering for our Mastery Map graduates during our annual conference in Houston
Yes.
as well. And depending on the uptick, right, and how successful the program is, we may look to do this on an ongoing basis. So
Yeah.
ultimately, Kavada, I'm sorry, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. That is up to you guys. If you adopt the program, you look like the program, we will definitely do more of it.
Oh yes, definitely, definitely.
So
Other
James here says, what's the greatest turnaround you've witnessed in the client as a result of the Mastery Map program?
Ooh, we don't have enough time, but let me try to pick some, and I'm not just trying to toot my horn, but seriously. So there, and actually let me say this, because I want to make sure I communicate. There's multiple use cases for this as well, and this is intentional. Again, I coming from corporate, coming from the way how frameworks are best used. I wanted this to be applicable not only as an individual standpoint. So if you're feeling stuck in the magical middle, or if let's just say you're not just stuck, maybe you're good, right? You're good, but you want your next to be your next. There's a use case for that for organizations. And one example, so this is also about organizational transformation. These 3 pillars are not just applicable to just individuals, right? It's also, if you're an organization, and Tan can attest to this, especially with respect to HR and workforce productivity. If you're stuck as someone in the magical middle at the talent level, you're affecting the organization's productivity. And especially in today's 5-generation workforce. So one client, I have a program called the Mutual Mentorship Mastery Program. And so if you follow me, I talk a lot about the power of mutual mentorship, especially across 5 generations in the workforce, right? Whether it's Gen Z, millennials, powerful Gen X, boomers, what have you. We have a lot of generations in the workforce. And so one of the ways we implemented the Mastery Map is that first we took them through the 3 pillars and did kind of an internal transformation program. So we did a cohort, about 3 different cohorts of talent at this organization. We went through kind of a condensed curriculum for the Mastery Map. Then what we decided to do is that how can we apply this to leadership, people leaders? And so one of the challenges this organization had was getting their talent across these different generations, specifically millennials and Gen Zs, working with boomers and Gen Xers, because sometimes, it can be a little battle. But how can we use the elements and best practices of mindset shifts and aligning meaning with purpose and productivity for the organization and milestones with respect to more working productively across the generations? So what we did, we implemented a mutual mentorship mastery program where we had individuals pair up based on generation. So a Gen Z to a Gen X or boomer to millennial. And we had them look at mindset reframing, right? Why do you feel this way about this generation or this particular person and talent based on their age or generation that wasn't being productive? How can we start with reframing mindset about intergenerational workforce? How do we then aligning or try to find out first what is meaningful for this particular person? As a boomer, who's somebody who's probably further in their career, maybe working for that particular company had more different meaning than like someone whose early career is a Gen Z. We want to encourage conversations mutually across those generations about that. And then how do we set milestones for the company and for the different mutual mentorship teams of, okay, based on your skills, based on how your mindset reframe, based on your purpose, combined with the goals of the company, how do we set new milestones of working together from a mutual mentorship, cross-generational standpoint? And I tell you, after that cohort program, that mutual mentorship mastery program, we communicated back to me, we saw better productivity, we saw better alignment of skills across different generations. And then when we started talking about AI with them, I always like to say, like, if you're more seasoned in your career, remember, AI is about behavior change. It's about treating this as another individual, right? Prompting strategies. Maybe there are certain levels of relationship equity that, say, someone in their 40s may have that they can apply to how they communicate with an AI agent versus someone who's in the younger, early career. They're very skilled with some of the technology standpoint, but they need some assistance with communication and prompting and talking to this agent in a way you would talk to another colleague. We put all that together, and then we saw, at least communicated back to me, better working relationships with the organization. So that's just one example of that, but there are many others that I could provide as well.
I love that. Thank you for that. It looks like we have the registration link in the chat if you guys are interested in reading a bit more, want to register for the program. And there also is a $50 off conference registration promo code that is located on LinkedIn. So please go to the National Black MBA LinkedIn page and you'll find the promo code there. And we may get it posted up in the chat as well. So, Adrian, we are down to our last 3 minutes.
Goes by so fast.
I know it does. It does.
Yeah.
What's your ultimate hope for anyone that joins the program?
Wow, great, powerful question. My ultimate hope is for you to be transformed. Okay, transform. You're going to hear that word a lot if you go through this program. You're going to hear that word a lot. You probably heard it a lot if you're already part of the National Black MBA Association community. I want you to be transformed. I want you to be transformed in your thinking, your mindset, how you're thinking and framing where you are in life, right? No matter your age or stage. I want you to be transformed in understanding that your story matters. All the experiences you've attained over the years, the skills you developed, your age, your experience, all the relationships you developed, you've nurtured along the way, how that aligns with how you can intentionally with agency and having domain over a new purposeful professional path. And I want you to be transformed in how you're thinking about these new goals that you want to attain, right? The goals of yesterday do not have to be the goals of tomorrow, okay? And it's okay if they are, but I want you to understand that you can create new goals no matter where you are in life, especially right now. And I want you to be thinking broadly and being transformed about where we are today as a society, especially in this age of disruption, right? A lot of times through history, disruption begets new transformation, if you think about it in that way. So at the end of the day, just be transformed of how you think about your mindset and what's meaningful for you at this stage of your career, and also that you are in the perfect position to just master these new milestones and really thrive, no matter where you are in your stage of your career.
Well said, sir. Well said. Thank you so much for your time. Can't wait till the program kicks off. I'll be right there alongside you on
Oh,
9th,
yes, yes.
making sure to support you in any way that we can. The association is so happy for the partnership. And if you guys have any other questions, feel free to comment on our post around the Mastery Map on LinkedIn. We'll get all of your questions answered and squared away. We will be revealing some of those companies that will be attending our meet and greet, those corporate partners that are going to attend, and that will only be upon graduation of the program. So that will be an exclusive meet and greet opportunity for our members that join the program. So thank you again so much, and look forward to see you in a few weeks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tan. And thank you, everyone, for make sure you join. Make sure you follow me here on LinkedIn if you haven't already. Come on in. It's going to be fun. We're going to have a party, all right? A Mastery Map party for 5 weeks. Let's do this.
Love it. Love it.
Love it.
Have a great rest of your evening.
Take care.